Free will. Believe it or not, everybody believes in some sort of limit to their free will. For example, no matter how much I think that I get to choose all things, the fact is, I can't. I didn't get to pick when I was born. I didn't get to pick where I was born. I didn't get to pick who my parents were. I can't decide to turn into a bird and fly away. So in reality, my will is limited. So the real question is not, is our will limited, but rather, just how limited is it? And then the second question builds off of that question. That is, what is grace? See, because depending on our view of original sin, which was the last video, if you haven't seen that one, be sure to check that one out. But our answer to original sin determines our view of free will. And our view of free will determines our view of grace. And our view of grace determines our overarching view of salvation. It is all intimately connected. So today we're continuing that deep dive down the rabbit hole into the views of Augustine, Pelagius, and the Eastern Fathers to see how each of these guys understood the highly debated topics of free will and grace. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump on in. So let's begin our journey with Augustine. A lot of people think that Augustine did not believe in free will, but that's not accurate. See, the truth is that Augustine did believe in free will, but the way he defined it had a catch. He held that because of original sin, we're born like this guy. Let me introduce you to my friend here. Can I call him Wilson?
Wilson! Wilson!
Well, Wilson, he doesn't have a heart. And because he has no heart, he's by all accounts dead. He can't see, so he can't see the things of God. He can't hear, so he can't hear the gracious calling of God. And he can't even want, because dead people don't want anything. So his entire existence is confined to the realm of death. Well, I can hear the question, well, if that's true, well, then where does his free will come in? This is where the catch is. You see, Augustine, he defined free will as the ability to do whatever you want to do. And see, Wilson here, he can do whatever he wants. It just so happens that because he's dead, he can only want dead things. Let me explain. You see, Wilson here, he can choose between a near endless amount of dead things. Everything he wants to choose, he will choose of his own free choice. And that, according to Augustine, is free will. So, if poor Wilson here can't see, hear, know, or love God, well then, how can he be saved? What hope is there? And the answer? Absolutely none. At least left to himself. But see, this is where Augustine's view of grace comes in. Now, just like Wilson needs a heart to have life, you and I, we need open heart surgery, spiritually speaking, to bring us to life. And this internal act of God allows us to do living things. We can now see the goodness of God. We can hear his gracious calling, and we can even respond to him in love. What we've just discussed is called Monergism, the idea that there's only one acting agent in the process of salvation. Think about it. We didn't choose him. We didn't seek after him. We didn't call out for him. Those were all things that we couldn't do. And yet, he chose us. He loved us and he saved us. We offered nothing. We brought nothing to the table. Because in Augustine's view, salvation is entirely the work of God from beginning to end. Now, for some, Augustine's view of free will might be a little bit unsettling. But think about this. If salvation ultimately depended on you or me, how secure would it really be? So in summary of Augustine's view, he held 1, free will is the ability to do whatever one wants to do. But due to original sin, humanity can only want to do evil. And 2, grace is an internal act of God in which the spiritually dead are brought to life. This process is 100% monergistic, meaning that it's God alone who initiates and accomplishes salvation. Now, Pelagius had a very different idea of free will. He said that free will is the ability to do other than what we want to do. For Pelagius, we were born neutral, not sinful and not good. And what that means is that you and I have the innate ability to choose either good or evil. So in that sense, our wills are a lot more free than what Augustine held. But notice, there's still a limit on my free will. I can't choose when I was born or where I was born. I can't choose to open up my hair follicles and grow beautiful hair. But at least in the realm of ethics and morals, I'm completely free to choose. Now, this is where things get very interesting, because it might sound to some like Pelagius held the belief that we don't need the grace of God in the process of salvation. But that's not entirely accurate. He believed that grace wasn't so much an internal transformation, as Augustine taught, but rather an external guide, kind of like a map or a compass. You see, a compass shows you the right direction, and a map reveals the path to take. So imagine being lost in an impossible maze with no way out. Without help, you'd be trapped there forever. But then someone steps in, not to carry you out per se, but to give you a compass to orient yourself and a detailed map showing you the way to freedom. That's how Pelagius saw God's grace. It equips, it instructs, it guides, but ultimately we have to make the choice to follow where it leads. Now, in the real world, these would include things like the heavens declaring the glory of God, our conscience, scripture, pastors, teachers, even life itself. We did absolutely nothing to deserve any of these, and therefore, these are gracious gifts of God. Which is why Pelagius could say without any hesitation, we are indeed saved by grace through faith. So in summary of Pelagius's view, 1, free will is the ability to choose other than what we want to do, because the image of God in humanity remains intact and unfettered. And 2, grace is an external act of God, providing humanity with the necessary tools to seek Him, none of which were inherently deserved. So it seems that Pelagius' view highlights human responsibility and God's gracious gifts that help us to seek after Him. It presents a high view of human nature, but some might struggle with that lack of an internal need for transformation. What do you think? Is he too optimistic about human nature? Be sure and let me know in the comments section. In our last video, we talked about how sin was like a heavy weight that was constantly dragging us down. But what if it's more like a sickness for which there's no cure? I can function for a while like this, and in fact, I can even act like nothing's wrong. But eventually, that sickness for which there's no cure, it's gonna get me. And that's how the Eastern Fathers viewed sin. We're not totally depraved, like Augustine said, but we do have a sickness, and for this sickness there is no cure. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can take that will heal this sickness. And just like Pelagius, the Eastern Fathers, they agreed that true free will is the ability to do other than what we want to do. We might for a short while be able to act fine and fight against the sickness, but at the end of the day, our free will isn't free enough to fight off the constant pulling, the constant weakening that sickness brings. And this is where grace comes in. This grace is both external and internal. Externally, God provides us with the support, the guidance, and the revelation to know that we're sick, and even the strength to cry out for help. But internally, we have God's active presence in us. And what that presence is doing is it's healing us from the inside out. And without this grace, death is certain. It's kind of like when the Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes. So in summary of the Eastern Fathers, 1, the Eastern Fathers agreed with Pelagius that free will is the ability to do other than what you want. However, unlike Pelagius, they believe that our wants are infected by a constant pull towards sin. And 2, grace is both external and internal. So, do you think this one strikes a better balance between human responsibility and God's active role in our transformation? Or do you think it's still missing something? Be sure and let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, let's wrap up here. So, Augustine said that we're spiritually dead, and only God can bring us back to life. He held to this idea known as Monergism. Pelagius, on the other hand, was more synergistic. He said that we're born neutral, and that God graciously gives us the tools that are necessary to choose Him. And then lastly, the Eastern Church Fathers said that although we are born sick with a tendency, a pull to sin, God graciously offers the cure. So in today's video, we had 3 views, 2 topics, and 1 big question left to answer. Which view makes the most sense to you? Now, I'm gonna go start working on the next video. I'm so excited about it, and I hope to see you there.